Good morning, everyone. I'm Tim Regan with Senior Housing News. We have yet another great session for you. Today, we're going to be talking about capturing and unlocking lead data to maximize return on investment. I think if you know anything about senior living sales, it is no secret that residents and their families are using the internet more than probably ever before to search for senior living communities, especially at the start of their journey. I think one challenge for operators is capturing that anonymous web traffic and turning it into pre-qualified leads. So today we are going to go over some of the ways that senior living companies can maximize their marketing, their investment and filling their community, again, by capturing and unlocking that lead data. So I want to introduce our panelists. Joining us, we have Jen Lovely. Jen is Executive Vice President of Sales at Conversion Logix, where she has built a senior living group that delivers qualified traffic to clients' websites to accelerate their leads, tours, and move-ins. A little bit about Jen. Before joining the company, she spent about 20 years in the hospitality sector as an executive in sales and marketing. So welcome, Jen. We also have John Greaves. John is owner and president of DEI Sales Management Central. John is a seasoned senior living sales and marketing coach. He's also an advocate for integrating operations with sales, and he's got experience working with companies in multiple industries to optimize performance in, I think, what you would consider difficult selling environments. So welcome, John.
Thank you.
Before we begin, a couple housekeeping items. I also want to thank our thought leadership sponsors, Sherpa, Conversion Logix, and Point Click Care. Our awareness sponsors, Caring.com, The Vector, and Gemini Advanced Marketing Solutions. I always like to say this, you can participate with us as we go along. This is a collaborative discussion. So if you'd like to submit questions, do so via the Q&A box on the Zoom window, and we will try to get to as many of those as we can today. Also, this goes for every session. If you miss any of the sessions, the recordings will be posted at the end of our event, and they'll be available for 30 days after. So, all right, we have a lot to cover today, so let's just jump right into it. I guess to start with, Jen, what sparked the idea for Conversion Logix to develop a lead generation software in the first place?
Well, probably about 7 years ago, Tim, we were kind of fumbling around a little bit, and clients were saying, hey, gosh, we've got lots of people coming to the website, but people just aren't converting. 9 years ago, we started live chat, which actually captured some of those prospects, but there were still folks out there who weren't filling out those long-winded forms. If you think about it, these days, there can be upwards of close to 50% of website traffic that's coming from digital devices or from mobile devices like your phone, your iPad, and you go to websites, and a lot of those forms are really long. We were looking at some the other day, all of us, 10 questions, 15 questions, 17 questions. People want that one-click experience, that one-touch experience. So we needed something that was easy, quick, and accessible, just easy to use when people were on mobile devices, especially. But also, too, all the adult children, for example, as well, they don't have time to enter information and then have somebody call them back. Just this long process of even getting in touch with someone in the first place. So I enter my information, I wait for a phone call to confirm a tour. So we knew that we needed to come up with something that was quick, easy, that one-touch kind of process, and that would confirm an appointment or confirm some sort of information immediately. So that's what spurred it.
Great. So I think you also have some more thoughts here, or at least I wanted to ask you about this. Tell me more about how senior living companies have difficulty identifying anonymous website visitors and why they have difficulty converting those into customers. I guess tell me more about the process. I'm curious to learn a little bit more about it.
Yeah, no problem. So there's a lot of people coming to your website. You don't know who those folks are, right? So when they come to the website, and we give them several different options. They can chat live, they can schedule an appointment, they can take advantage of a concession, they can look at a live video, they can attend an event. What happens is, in order to convert through any of these modules or apps, we then receive their name, their phone number, their email address, even if they're just requesting a brochure. Something else that's kind of neat too is that by identifying these people, when they actually complete one of these forms, we're able to look at their lease journey visualizer as well. So that's something we'll talk about a little bit later. But again, all these people are coming to your website. You wouldn't leave your front desk unattended or your phones unattended. Why would you leave your website unattended? So
Great. And I'm also curious, do you have any examples of, maybe where there was a problem and the cloud, the conversion cloud helped with that?
Yeah, for example, I say there's one that I was thinking of recently. We had a community and it was in a very established neighborhood. A lot of people take a lot of time making decisions. And they weren't ready to schedule a tour, for example. They weren't ready to pick up the phone. They were just doing a lot of investigative work, just kind of doing their homework. And so by using the cloud and by using things like events or just request a brochure or join this speaker series group, right? Or listen to this speaker series. It starts next Monday and it's every Monday for 4 months in a row. We were able to convert people who were just slowly going through the process or just tiptoeing into the process. It took them a long time. Prior to that, this particular community, they had a really tough time. People just were not converting until they were absolutely ready to take a tour or to talk to somebody. They felt like if they scheduled a tour, that it would be a hard sell. Somebody would want them to move in tomorrow. And again, these people were established. They stay in their homes from, for years on end, and they're not ready to convert right away. So that was a huge success, being able to use that.
Great. I'm also curious, do you have any stats about how many leads the Conversion Cloud has generated, or just generally, what impact this has all had?
Yeah. So after 3 years, Conversion Cloud has generated almost 600,000 leads across 800 companies, which is a lot. And the thing to know about these type of leads, these people are offering up their information themselves. They're intentional. Somebody isn't pulling this information out of them. So the clients have really good success. These are good, hot, solid leads, and very intentional. In fact, I talked to one owner the other day. His conversion was 27.1% of these folks coming from the Conversion Cloud were depositing or moving in, which is huge. So, and also in the first few months after TCC or the Conversion Cloud software launched, we saw clients converting 65% more leads than when they weren't using it. So just quick, and it's easy and helpful.
Interesting. John, I want to bring you into the discussion here. I know you've got some thoughts about lead generation and how you do that online. So I guess tell us more about that, and I guess open the floor for us.
Well, it's interesting because I'm coming from the sales and the sales management side, and so the idea of getting traffic is certainly valuable when it comes to lead generation, but it's the ratio that matters most. How many of the clicks into your site, and then how many of the engagement opportunities that you're presenting actually yield someone who activates as a prospect? And it's that activation that I'm paying a lot of attention to. Just driving raw traffic or just driving click-throughs is not sufficient to determine whether it's a good use of your time and money. So yeah, what I like about the Conversion Cloud tools is that you're seeing more of those visitors to the site. You're not going to get all of them. Certainly, you're not going to get a sale for each one of them immediately, but you're getting something. You're getting some engagement. You're getting a little more information than you might have otherwise. And sometimes that helps you understand what you're doing well. Sometimes it helps you understand what you're not doing as well as you could. So yeah, it's the opportunities that it drives to that I think it's just so important.
Great. So I want to talk about some of the strategies that companies are using to actually generate leads. So across the companies that are using the Conversion Cloud, and maybe Jen, we'll go back to you to start with. Yeah, what strategies are they using right now to generate leads? Tell us more about that.
There are tons of strategies, Tim. And something I wanted to mention too is keep in mind, everybody's in a whole new mindset, a whole new, frame of mind. So for example, personally, I shopped online a lot prior to the pandemic, but I noticed myself, I joke and say I'm being lazy. I'm not going to go pick that up. I'm just going to go online and do it. And so there's so many people that are online. The multitude of people shopping online and looking at senior living communities it's escalated. It's even more than usual. So again, we want to have as many opportunities as possible for as many people in different phases of the selection process or decision-making process. So some really great ideas, for example, just scheduling a tour, right? That's great. Or maybe they don't want to schedule a tour. They just want to schedule a conversation with someone. They just want to schedule an initial conversation. Another thing that's worked out really, really good is, for example, doing some fun themed ideas like Taco Tuesdays. If somebody wants to come in for a tour personally, they can come in for a tour. Chef makes, tacos for two, or they purchase them ahead of time, however they want to go about that. But they can come in for a tour, take that home as a dinner or lunch, or even if they do a Zoom tour or a FaceTime tour. The great thing is they can do that if they don't feel comfortable coming in, but then they can drive up and someone from the community can hand them the meal, and they get to have that interaction and say hi, and see people in person. That's been a really cool. Speaker series have been great, even for IL, things like, just how to stay healthy and fit. Maybe they have a nutritionist on one week. Another week they have maybe the gals from Live Now, maybe they have them doing a downsizing seminar, which is really cool. So another thing is income calculator. Do I qualify? We've all talked about this. There's so many people out there who think there's no way I'd ever be able to afford senior living. In fact, most people that I talk to say, oh, it's so expensive. Costs $20,000 a month. It's so interesting, the perception that people have. So we actually created an income calculator. It's like a mini complementary cost analysis about 4 years ago. Literally, this evolved from sitting around, having lunch with a client. We were literally just outside of her office in Napa, sitting out on a patio. And she said, I can't get people to fill out this complementary cost analysis. There's so many questions, and there's a lot of questions and a lot of personal questions. That's a lot of information to fill out on a form online. And I said, why don't we do a mini version of it? And just enough to give you something to chew on before you call them. You can't ask them everything, but what are some of those key questions you want to ask? For example, do you own a home or rent a home? How much do you spend on activities and maybe care outside the home every month? And, do you work with an investment broker, just knowing if they have investments. So, maybe just a few, top line questions, and you'll kind of know right away. And even if you assume incorrectly, at least you've got something to go off of when you call them. And people really are willing to give a shortened version of that. So income calculator, live chat is amazing. It just befuddles me really how many people like to chat live, right? And they'll give us their whole life story. It builds trust. Very interesting. There's maybe a lot of adult children who are sitting in an office, or they, could be on a call, but they just think of something, they want to ask a quick question. And it's kind of nice because they can ask a question and get an answer without having to call, and then someone's looping them into a long-winded conversation. So there's so many variations. I have clients using up to as many as 8 conversion tools. And it pays off. One that's using 8 right now, they had 10 move-ins in October, 15 in November, 13 in December. They're on par for 11 in January. So it just really depends on how much business you need, how many leads you need. And then we just strategize together on different ideas that we could use.
I know that some of this software can be used for other departments as well. Can you tell us more about that and how that kind of works, and what you can also use the Conversion Cloud for?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we've all identified a huge problem in staffing over the last year and a half, especially. And so we started working with a lot of our clients on recruiting campaigns. But again, you're bringing people to your website. You've got that careers page. What does that career page look like? Are they able to easily access what they need to access? Do they fill out an application form? What do they do? So yes, we've used those Conversion Cloud modules for either schedule an interview, find out more about current job openings, view our current job openings now. Even, for example, some people have, instead of a video showing their property, maybe they have a video of just some of their employees saying, hey, we love working here. Hi, I'm Jen, and I love working for, Senior Housing News, right? So it's kind of neat to be able to do that. So yes, we've used those for recruiting purposes. It has worked. I was actually really surprised. One of my clients said they had, for an ED position, they had a $25,000 signing bonus, and they were putting it out there with different venues, got absolutely no traction. Started doing some recruiting advertising with the modules. Literally within like 3 days, they had 4 solid recruits. They hired somebody. So again, people just want to be able to request something immediately, one click, one touch. It's very visible. It's worked tremendously. So you can, just put your creative hat on. You can use it in so many ways, and we'll work with people to do that as well.
Great. John, I want to bring you in here.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about strategies companies are using to generate leads?
Well, I am an enormous fan of setting yourself up to engage in the way that makes sense for the prospect. What are they looking for? What do they want? And we can't know that if we try to put them in a box, if we try to withhold information or constrain the way we go back and forth. All we're doing is leaving opportunities on the table. So I'm a big fan of using those multiple engagement tools, a layered engagement strategy that allows the prospect to pick. What are their preferences? How much information do they wish to share at this point? And on the sales side, we know we tend to lose a conversation either when they don't trust us or when they don't feel educated enough to have a good conversation yet. And so if we can help with on the engagement side prior to a sales conversation, help someone feel more comfortable or confident that yes, we're here to be helpful. Yes, we can be trusted. Yes, we are in a position to advise you on what's a good decision, not just where to move, but also what are some of the considerations you want to take into account. I think the engagement tools are extremely helpful on that front. And I just think it's really important for teeing up good, productive conversations and good discovery after they decide, yes, we really do want to follow through on this process.
So I actually just was hosting a panel about partly about empathy in sales. So this is all sort of top of mind and fresh for me. I want to, John, if you don't mind, I want to dig deeper actually on that for a second. Sure. Can you talk about specifically, how you see that sales journey for people that aren't ready to move into senior living community? What might that look like versus someone who's on that more needs-based side that's like, my mom's got to come in yesterday.
Right. Well, every family's approaching this from a different perspective, and they're all going to have their own preconceptions of what this industry is like. They're going to have fears, they're going to have shame, they're going to have guilt, all those things that come into play. And our approach is to simply serve as a guide toward a good decision. You're not here to push anything down someone's throat. You're certainly not here to judge. You're here to offer up some insight into this process in the first place. How do families typically get to a good decision? That's really often left on the table. People are really saying, no, move here, move here, move here, rather than focusing first on whether to move. What are the implications of the status quo? Why would you want to change what you're doing now? And then addressing some of the when issues. When is a good time to proceed in this process? And so many of our websites are just focused on where to move, and they're not really offering up a ton of information on the whether and the when. So I feel like it's so important to offer a lot of transparency, a lot of information, and acknowledge that this is a difficult process to even begin, much less complete.
Yeah. So senior living sales, part therapy, part financial management.
Yeah.
So sounds easy. So great. So we're getting a couple questions here from the audience, which is great. I want to remind everyone that if you have some questions, send them in. We'll try to get to them throughout our discussion. Maybe John, I'll stick with you since we're talking, and then Jen, if you have thoughts, come in here too.
Yeah.
The question was, do you have any marketing and sales alignment strategies? Marketing generates leads, sales converts leads to move-ins, marketing leans on sales data to capture for an accurate ROI analysis, sales leans on marketing for promotion. What are your top 3 strategies? So I kind of read the question there. I guess the big question is, what are your marketing and sales strategies for alignment?
Okay, well, first of all, that is a great question. I mean, it's an anonymous attendee, but kudos to you for even thinking along those lines, because I think that is the important area to integrate. As you said in your introduction, operations and sales and marketing all have roles to play, and they're dependent on one another. So from our perspective, when we're doing our training, we want to ensure that every incoming lead is accounted for one way or another. without a whole ton of judgment, without worrying so much about where did it come from, it's how did it come out? What was the outcome? And so we're paying a lot of attention to the channels and improving the channels that come in. We do pay attention to conversion rates, and it's not as much even about the eventual sale. It's how many are actually just engaging with us and willing to have a sales conversation, willing to agree to a next step. So marketing, as we talk about it, if you're speaking to a group, you're marketing. If you're speaking to a person, you're in a sales conversation. And that transfer of lead generation over to sales is an organizational competency. It's what you should want to get good at. And that's something we pay a ton of attention to. And at the end of the day, if your teams are highly trained, if they're highly motivated, if they're documenting what they're doing, which is just a professional attribute of a sales counselor, you're going to understand which of your channels are actually performing for you. And they don't all have to be fantastic. But if some are causing an undue strain on your organization, or if the close rate is so low because it's not exclusive, or it's not particularly well targeted, then you have to pay attention to that too.
And Tim, John and I have actually been talking about this a lot, just with combined clients that we're working with and whatnot too. But right now as well, more than any time at all, there's a combined effort, right? So there's multiple channels where leads are coming from. So someone may originally come in through a paid search ad, right? And they find you there. And then they're talking to some friends at a barbecue, and they say, oh yeah, my grandma lives there, or my mom lives there, or, gosh, what do you think of that place? And then someone's on Facebook and sees another ad, and, and the list goes on and on. So it's a combined effort too. And I think it's really important for people to recognize that it's not necessarily just one thing marketing wise that maybe brings the lead in, but it's a combined effort. And I'll kind of talk a little bit more as we go along here too, about looking at how people come in and how you can use that information to, do a better job with that empathy chip, right, during the sales process. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as well.
Great. Well, let's keep the discussion moving. Again, if you have questions, please submit them, and we'll get to them throughout the discussion today. So Jen, along the lines of kind of where you were going, pre-qualifying leads in senior living sales, so important. How can companies do this? And maybe if you have any examples, please share.
Yeah, absolutely. So like John mentioned too, it's about finding out where they are in the journey. So for example, whether it's through live chat, or whether it's through web forms that people are using web forms, or through the Conversion Cloud modules, there's an opportunity every time someone gives you their name, email address, and phone number to also ask a few questions. So as you're thinking about it, if someone just requests a brochure, you maybe don't want to ask the question of, would you like to come in tomorrow for a tour? Right? They're just tiptoeing into this. So what you might want to just say is things like, hey, what's your timeline for making a decision? What kind of amenities, are you looking for? Do you know which level of care you're looking for? Maybe they just know mom needs senior living or grandma needs senior living. So what we can do on the back end is say, okay, let's look at each of our conversion points and what questions are applicable to that process those people are in. You don't want to ask basically a soft conversion question or ask for a soft conversion, but then have these hardcore questions that go along with it. So again, just tiptoeing. So as John mentioned, you're capturing their information, but asking a few questions, which will then take you to that next step. And so it's kind of a progression that you're looking at. So again, maybe if someone schedules a tour, then maybe you ask questions such as, what's your monthly budget? That type of thing. Do you own your home or rent your home? That sort of thing. Because if they're scheduling a tour, they're ready to walk in the door. So in my opinion, anyway. So that's important to ask those type of questions, just to give you some better ammunition and understand the person before they walk in the door. So also, for example, with the income calculator, I think it's really important, or the cost analysis, not only what their monthly budget is, but I think it's important to know things like, do they own their home or rent their home? Are they currently receiving help from people outside their home? It's really important for people to recognize and start thinking in their head, oh, wow, this isn't just a price I pay to live there, but it's all these services that go along with it. So anyway, it's really important to strategize and select good questions while you're creating those conversion opportunities. Great thing is though, is that you can actually change those on the fly. If we see they're not working, we can change those and we can see an immediate change in conversions as well.
John, I think you've covered some of this today as we've been talking.
Yeah.
Tell me more about how you see pre-qualification in senior living sales.
Well, we know there are 4 key targets of discovery that will weigh on whether this person is on the way to a decision or is going to make a decision in your favor. And some of the pre-screening engagement tools can check off some of those boxes, or at least get you started down the road. And that goes to the decision process they're going to come to, and who are the decision influencers in this process, and when are they going to lean on those decision influencers too. The financial aspect of this decision is incredibly important. Is it going to be manageable? The sales counselor has an opportunity to offer insights. Where a brochure offers bullet points, the sales counselor can actually really reveal things that are perhaps valuable but not known to the shopper. The timeline for move, of course, is important, and really just that idea of, does this particular solution, does this particular community make sense for the prospect? So when we're able to start gathering that data without getting really intrusive, I mean, we don't really need to get all that wrapped up in their health condition or their particular struggles. It's really just more about getting them teed up to have a productive conversation that is not judgmental, that it's not, overly intrusive, and it's not designed to filter them out. It's designed to serve their needs. So I think it's anytime we can give the salesperson a head start on that, you're giving them a little more comfort, a little more confidence, and you're getting the conversation off to a really, on a strong footing.
So we have another question from the audience, which is great. This is a question kind of for both of you. So maybe whichever one of you is fastest to the draw, you'll start. But what's the biggest change in sales and marketing that the pandemic has driven and you think is here to stay?
I'll go ahead and answer. I've got one thing I want to comment on is just having the flexibility of tours and being able to pivot really quickly, right? So the first thing is with tours, you've got to feel comfortable with a FaceTime tour, with an actual pre-created tour, with a phone conversation, whatever somebody wants, you've got to be able to move quickly with that and not feel uncomfortable. And then secondly, just being able to pivot quickly. Things are ever changing. So not having anxiety or panicking over the fact that, oh, today we can do tours, tomorrow we can't. Today we can do events, tomorrow we can't. Literally, again, the first week in January, I had so many clients calling me saying, hey, we've got to pull down all events. Okay, perfect. Let's put something else out that is going to help convert that's not an event. Can we team up with someone and do some sort of or offer some sort of a Zoom call or speaker series? Is there something we can do on the fly? So I think it's really being able to pivot quickly and also being able to have various tour opportunities and feeling comfortable with all of those.
John, how about you? Biggest change in sales and marketing that you think is here to stay?
Well, first and foremost, this. I mean, getting together in a group setting, but not exposing one another to our germs is a big deal. I mean, my business has completely changed in the way I deliver our coaching, the way I deliver our training. And I wish I had more time in front of groups. I wish I had more time face to face, but at the end of the day, we have to get a job done, and imparting information from a distance is part of it. On the sales side, allowing teams to get really creative about how they engage with their prospects, I think that's been extremely important. Our methodology around rating leads has way more to do with, did they simply agree to a next step that's on the calendar? it does not have to be a tour. In fact, that's certainly not always even the best way to get great discovery. And so we were able to shift and get our teams really, really focused on what do you do to maintain a connection, to maintain a conversation that is not in the structure of a formal tour. And we found that when organizations get creative about that, they build the board that allows them to see, okay, here's how many people I just have engaged. They took back a lot of power. Sales teams that were very, very freaked out about the idea, oh, I can't tour, doesn't mean I can't succeed. It just means I can't do it using that particular tool in the toolbox. So we gave them a whole bunch of other tools. And I think those will remain in the toolbox. That's what I'm really most excited about, is sales counselors feeling empowered to get out of their office and go really, find out what's going on in the lives of their prospects. So yeah.
And Tim, I'll say, and you'll remember when Eric actually mentioned to us that one of his sales counselors was talking to a prospect, and she mentioned that she liked Rocky Road ice cream. They were all just joking about, desserts. And literally the sales counselor a few days later went and hand delivered her a little pint of Rocky Road ice cream. And, just to keep that connection going. And again, that's super creative. So like John said, we have to think out of the box for sure.
Yeah. The other thing I just wanted to point out is I think that the pandemic has really encouraged organizations who reserved a lot of information for a personal face-to-face conversation. There was a philosophy of not being transparent, of not providing so much information that someone could get to a decision about whether or not you're a good fit. To withhold that until later in the process. I mean, that has flown out the window and never to return. Price transparency, policy transparency, so much more information available to you on when you're doing your initial shop. I think that's incredibly important. And I think, organizations that cling to an idea of, oh, if I tell them too much, they won't like us, or they'll go somewhere else. I think they're cutting off their nose to spite their face. I mean, I think we really do need to be very transparent about, hey, here's what this is, here's the experience, here's what our starting prices are, and without apology. It's just, no, this is a valuable thing. So that's my 2 cents.
Great. Jen, what you said a moment ago, I think is a really good segue into something else I want to ask you about. So obviously I'm sure we have operators watching today that are wondering, what are some good follow-up lead strategies, or lead follow-up strategies, I should say. One of them might be buying a pint of ice cream. So tell us more about what tips you have for communities looking to improve their lead follow-up strategy.
Yeah, no problem. So a lot of people who are watching probably don't realize yet at this point that you're able to look at least journey visualizers on the back end in the system. And I can literally see that Tim was on our website 10 times before he converted. And then when he converted, he simply requested a brochure. But then I can also see that John was only on the website once. He came in through a paid search ad. He probably Googled it, came in through an ad, and he converted and scheduled a tour right away. So I think it's really important to know how to make next steps, a lot of times based upon maybe assuming people's personalities. So Tim, I would probably maybe take things a little bit slower with you, since it took 10 times before you converted and then you just asked for a brochure. Whereas, for example, John, came to the website once, I can see that on the back end, and then scheduled a tour immediately. I might assume that he either needs to make a decision quick, or he just is a quick decision maker. And I might tailor my questions around that. I think it's really important to read a person a little bit, right? If they're kind of holding back, don't push them. If they are running with their hair on fire, run with them, right? So I think that's extremely important to be aware of that. Also, I think it's really important to ask prospects, do you prefer a phone call? Do you prefer a text message? Do you prefer email? Find out what the best mode of communication is. I can't remember who I was with the other day, but someone actually, in fact, maybe John and I were with somebody, and someone actually held up their phone. He held up his phone and his inbox, and he had like over 1,200 emails that were unread. So we were like, okay, probably email is not a good way to communicate with him. So you say, what's the best way? He said, send me a text message. I'll reply back instantly. So I think really just asking people those questions versus assuming, how can I reach you? What's going to be the best point of contact? And also, how often do you want me to reach out to you? As to John's comment a little earlier, if someone is in the beginning stages, maybe just ask, can I call you in 4 weeks? Does that sound good to you? And put that on the calendar. So get them to agree of when a next step would be appropriate, and figure out how often they want to be contacted. You're not ready for a decision. Would you like to be added to our email blasts and find out about current events that are happening? And then if you decide to attend one, you could attend one. Would you like to stay up to date? So really giving people all those options, finding out the best modes of communication, and then also being able to look at how your leads came into the community and really using that as a tool when you go to engage with people.
Great. John, I know you've got some thoughts about this as well. Do you have perhaps any tips for communities looking to improve their lead follow-up strategy?
Well, any organization that lived through the last 2.5 years realized that there was a time when the phone stopped ringing. There was a time when the email notifications and new leads just simply stopped. And we had an obligation to continue to engage with our pool of prospects. So database mining became the tool for any of my clients. They got into their databases to re-engage people. And one thing I asked sales counselors to pay attention to were their connection rates. And what they realized was if they would write down notes about when someone preferred to be reached, if that made it to the CRM, and if you got a clue of that so-and-so would prefer a text, so-and-so prefers email, so-and-so works all day, but when they called in last, they called in at 7. So what are their preferences? If you can document that, when you have to go back to the database later, it's so much nicer to have some sense of when to reach this person, because your connection rates then skyrocket. And so the best time to call someone was when they agreed it was okay to call them. Get that information, get it in the CRM. That's the most important thing to do. And when they started paying attention to that, that's when their connection rates started to really go up. We pay attention to how many of your calls actually connected, and how many of those resulted in a next step appointment. And you're always looking to improve those ratios. And so capturing preferences and documenting them, I think that's a best practice that a lot of people do not pay enough attention to, and they can really benefit from it.
I'm assuming speed to lead is very important right now. Can you talk more about that, kind of, how that fits into this picture, and maybe offer some tips if you can?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if they're on your site and you have an opportunity to engage with them, for the moment, you have their attention exclusively. They're on your site. You paid to get them there through your marketing dollars. If you can engage with them while they're there, and that's that huge advantage of live chat. If you can, or a representative of your organization can engage with them, you've got an opportunity to draw them in a little further, to build a little back and forth, perhaps get that next step scheduled. While you're doing that, they're not paying attention to anyone else. You've got their attention exclusively for the moment. The challenge comes is if you aren't able to engage, if you're passive and they move on to the next item on their Google search, well, that next item may be someone for whom it's not going to be an exclusive lead. They're going to broadcast that lead. It could be a lead aggregator. And then your close rate for that inquiry drops from 25% for someone who has an engagement and a scheduled tour down to 1 in 25. And so it's an enormous burden on you to take advantage of that exclusivity while you have it. And that's why speed to lead is so important. the data is pretty old on this, but I think it probably still holds up. The first person to get that face-to-face interaction has a 5 times advantage over the second person. And if you can get that done soon, you're going to get more than your fair share of those up for grabs leads.
I think it's really important right now, Tim, too, not only with prospects, but with future employees. Speed to lead is extremely important on that side of on that side as well. So keep that in mind as you're getting back to employees and everything. Future employees, if it takes someone 2 days to get back to them, they might think, wow, is it going to be like this when I ask a question and I'm at work, right? So, and it's tough out there finding those good people. So.
And I'm assuming to John's point earlier, if you don't keep speed to lead in hiring, just like a lead might go to a lead aggregator, well, someone might decide to go work for someone else in those 2 days that it took you to respond. So that makes a lot of sense, I think. So Jen, I want to talk with you a little bit more about using technology to attribute conversions and optimize campaigns. So I guess tell us more about that, and keeping along this theme, if you have any tips, please share them.
Absolutely. So again, and I'd be happy to have conversations with people further, but there's different journey visualizer tools out there. And we actually have one on the back end of the Conversion Cloud software as well. But you're able to see what stage the prospect is in. You're able to see, from start to finish, how long it's taken them, how many times they visited the sites, the different touch points, how familiar maybe they are with the community, if they have engaged in several ways, not engaged at all. So I think it's really important to have some sort of technology where you're able to see that. That sheds a lot of light on prospects and just your marketing in general, right? And for example, too, live chat acts as another member of your sales team. That's huge. Having someone who can answer a question right now. So it's really important to have someone who is savvy enough, knows enough information, has that empathetic chip, and can visit with people when they come to the site and get them to some sort of next step, whether it's just understanding pricing or having a next conversation set up, that sort of thing. And also it's really important to know, where are people converting at what point? If you're able to see where people are converting, then hey, I've got more people who are converting with this strategy. I can spend more money there. I can move dollars from here to here. So oftentimes with clients, what we'll do is we'll say, okay, we've got a lot of people who are coming from this strategy, but then they're converting through this strategy. And when it's time to pivot and oopsie daisy, we need more move-ins, then we know exactly where to put the marketing dollars because we know where people are converting. So those are important things to know. And we can help you. There's a lot of people out there that can help you to understand where those are happening. So, and again, keep in mind, there's more searches because of online search. So sometimes it's taking people maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 touches versus 1, 2, or 3, because they're, kind of dinking around and they're searching online. So that's what people are doing these days.
Yeah. John, what are your thoughts about this? How can communities use technology to attribute conversions and optimize campaigns?
Well, I think the first thing you want to do is just blocking and tackling. Let's be sure you're getting the basics right. And that does involve monitoring. How are your websites performing? Doing that incognito search of your own property. Well, who else is showing up on that page? Gosh, I didn't know that competitor was getting an ad on my own name's search terms. Okay, that's interesting to know. Or, what are the lead aggregators offering up? Are they offering up my own pricing? That will often happen. And if you do a search and your property name shows up in 2 different places, one of them has a price, yours does not, people will tend to click through on the one that has the price. Guess what? That prospect is now going to get broadcast to all of your competitors because it wasn't actually your site. It was an aggregator. And so you have to pay attention to, how am I showing up and what is a consumer looking at the first time they search for my own property name or what I do in my market. The other thing that we want to, of course, pay attention to is how did you find us? How did you come to find us? And in that initial sales conversation, it's not just the Google search that got them there. Did they know about you through another resource? Were they actually a referral from one of your own residents? So that question of who should I thank is important for us to get that attribution correct. In the old days, you saw in CRMs, yellow pages, yellow pages, yellow pages as the attribution. And I think Google search has sometimes become the yellow pages of attribution. There's usually something behind that Google search, particularly if they search for your name in particular. So we do want to make sure we're asking, who should I thank for you being here today? Because you'll often find that it wasn't just a random Google search. It was actually a fulfillment of something that you did right, perhaps with a family member or a former resident or an employee. And now you've got something to go on for building a new referral relationship, or at least a thank you.
And it's really important for the sales team too, to understand why that question is so important, right? Because then what it allows the marketing team to do is to put their marketing dollars in the right spot. Another one, John, drive by, right?
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, and that's another thing too, is that if you're seeing in your CRM that every single source is drive-by, or every single source is referral, or every single source is Google, you'll know that there's probably some training that needs to happen on the back end. Literally, I had a new executive director start it's a larger company that I work with, but a new executive director started, and I got him on the phone and I kind of showed him what we did and showed him the back end of the CRM and just said, okay, this is what I'm seeing. This is why it's so important. And he's like, wow, okay, I get it. Right. You want to know where they're coming from, who you should thank. That's a great way to put it, John, when you're talking to a prospect, who do I have to thank? Did you hear about us through a friend? Do you just live in the neighborhood? Did you Google it? Did you see a Facebook ad? How did you hear about us? Right. And go from there. And, sometimes it isn't just one thing. So
I want to actually go back to what you were talking about, John. I don't want to put either of you on the spot, but I have a question. And by the way, I want to tell everyone, we have about 10 minutes left. So if you have any questions for us, now is the time to send them in. So please use your Q&A box if that's the case. Looks like we got a couple coming in, which is great. I'll start with mine because I'm selfish. So John, you talked a little bit about pricing earlier. And one of the themes of today's discussion has been transparency. I've talked with a lot of operators who have a lot of differing opinions about whether they should be sharing their pricing on their website. With one thought being, well, like you said, if I don't share it, they might go and get that somewhere else. That's not on my site. On the other hand, I've also heard the argument of, well, if I put my pricing on my website, then what if someone excludes me very early on in the process and they didn't get a chance to really know much about us? Maybe we could have made that sale had they taken the opportunity to ask us some questions. So I guess, knowing that there's probably no right answer to this, what's your philosophy on pricing and how to advertise that?
So I completely sympathize with the concern. If they see how much I cost, they're going to shy away because they don't know how valuable it is, the things that I'm doing for them. They're thinking, oh my gosh, it couldn't possibly be worth it. On the other hand, if you look at every field that has been horribly disrupted by a disruptive technology, like hotels, airlines, taxis, in almost every case, used car sales, Carvana coming into a market and disrupting used car dealer sales. It's all because someone decided, we're going to offer a lot more clarity. We're going to offer a lot more information. We're going to take away some of the mystery or the black box. And so, transparency of rate is important. Consumers are choosing to go with people who are willing to put themselves out there and be helpful. And if you can offer up some level of pricing without apology and just make a point of saying, it's probably a good idea to have a conversation about what this means financially. What are the things that we take care of that you may not know? We can offer some insights there. But I think if you're feeling like you have a better shot at getting people before they know, you're also going to burden your sales team with a whole bunch of people who are woefully not financially qualified for what you do. And if you calculate the value of that salesperson's time, you may discover that getting a little bit of filter at the front end, making it clear that this is a product that isn't free, will save an awful lot of time, and create a much higher activation rate of the leads that do come in.
We have a sort of a tack on question to what we were just talking about, slightly different topic. I'll read the question as it was sent. To your current point, our prospects are changing with each day to become more tech savvy. Given sales team turnover scenarios, will there be a time when prospects, excuse me, utilize the website alone to actually purchase senior living, like multifamily transactions or buying a car? This is very interesting to me. So yeah, do you think people are going to ever shop for senior living and just sort of buy it online and it's a one-stop shop?
I personally don't think so. I think this is where we call it at Conversion Logix, human in the loop. Some things need human in the loop. This is an emotional decision. This is not booking a hotel room to go on a weekend trip. So I believe that they'll do a lot of research online. They'll do some of it online, but in the end, they're going to want to have a conversation because it is emotional. And a lot of times there's multiple people involved as well, several family members, et cetera. So, and dealing with different personalities. So I think it's going to be a combination. John, what's your thought?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the course of any major purchase decision, a consumer has got to say to themselves, what are the consequences of a bad decision? And if I do this, if I make this commitment without being fully informed of what the implications are, that the risk to my parent, or the risk to me, or the risk to my grandmother, it can be enormous if I don't do enough to understand, yes, there's a promise has been made. Yes, there's an exchange of value. Yes, I feel comfortable that this is a good thing to do. What I will say, though, in answer to your question, I think people have figured out that no one of us is smarter than all of us, and we pay a lot of attention to former users of any given product. We're using reviews now to filter at a higher level than ever before. And you cannot expect to succeed in the long run if you are not paying attention to your reputation, paying attention to managing negative reviews when they happen, and that's inevitable. But if you're not paying attention to your online footprint, your online reputation, you can get really burned on a few bad reviews out there. And so I do think people are paying much, much more attention to reviews and to your overall presence online, more so than before, where you just had to have a picture of a building and a phone number. So I hope that's a good answer to your question. But yeah.
We have another question. This one's sort of a one-part question, one-part comment. I'll start with the comment first because I find it very interesting. Our community is specifically noticing younger and younger people inquiring in their 60s and in their 70s. This is attributed to our renovations and marketing and many other things. But I'm curious, is there some general trend with people wanting to live in senior living communities at a different age? Or maybe another way to ask that is, are you noticing any trends in people searching for senior living? Are younger people searching for it online or that sort of thing?
Looking at the data, I'm not seeing younger people looking at it for themselves. I'm seeing people in their 60s looking at it for parents. And also, like, average, when I'm talking to all of our communities, the averages that I'm hearing are even for IL. People think that they're completely on their own, don't even consider it till they're 75-ish. So I have not seen that trend. That would be kind of interesting. I would be curious to know, is it an IL only building? Just out of curiosity. And also it'd be interesting to know the geographic area where it's located. I think a lot of people are under the impression that it is going to cost them more if they live in their house till the very last moment. They can save money and then they don't move in until it's necessary. So if it's an IL community, and it's a nice upscale area, I could see that happening for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to, sorry, John, I don't mean to interrupt you. The person actually, I think, had responded. They said that they are a senior living community, a single site community in Seattle, 62 plus nonprofit life plan community with all levels of care. So interesting.
So just a couple thoughts come to mind, and I'm going to date myself here. 2008, there was a pretty robust market for move-ins into ILs for people in their 70s at that time. And when housing values dropped, the market for IL and the market for active adult shut down, and it shut down for years. The active adult side is really coming on strong now, and developments are starting to get out there and get their name out there for that initial downsize move. And so I'm seeing, my active adult clients are all, kind of going crazy right now. So you may be seeing some response in your market to active adult communities now getting up and running. You also may be seeing a natural market response when people are realizing that their property value today may be at a very near peak, because interest rates are going to go up over the next year, which means buying power is going to go down, which means the value of the home may not hold up. So when you've got that combination of market activity on the active adult side and more on the IL side, and you've got some, record housing values, I could definitely see why you would be getting inquiries from people who are looking to do a downsize from their long-term home and considering whether it's time to look at a community like yours, or whether they want to do something as an interim, like a condo or a multifamily setting.
And I agree 100%, knowing that it's an active adult or life plan community, active adult. I can see where that's coming from. And like John said, if they're going to get, peak prices for their houses right now, what better time than to do it now? So
yeah, that makes sense to me as well. All right, we have a few minutes left. I think we have time for one or two more questions here. So I want to actually stick with this topic. Maybe Jen, we'll start with you, and then John, if you have thoughts, weigh in. During the sales process, well, I guess I should back up and say, I hear from operators all the time who say, we are targeting a younger, older adult for, we have active adult units on our campus, and we're trying to get people that are a little younger than the average age to come in and take a tour. So is there an offer during that sales process that you think is more enticing to younger, older adults versus, people who are closer to that average age of senior living?
Honestly, just talking to them about downsizing, right? So look at it as downsizing versus looking at it as senior living. I think that's really important to do. Also, just targeting the right demographic, right? So previously, a lot of people were using terms such as, senior living, independent senior living. John and I laugh about it all the time. We're like, okay, we can move into senior living here, right? So, but the thing is that probably is not going to attract me to move in. But if someone says, downsize today, or let's say that I'm just looking online for 55 plus neighborhoods, right? I'm thinking, okay, tired of all the kids riding their bicycles and their Hot Wheels in the neighborhood. I just want a neighborhood that is quiet and just, I don't want to live in a place where there's 90-year-olds, but I also want to have, maybe 55 to 65 or something. If I'm online and I see an ad and I go, oh, wow, this is interesting, right? So the thing is I think just letting people know and educating them that there is another option out there. What's happening is instead of programming people to think it's senior living, let them know that it's a downsize or that it's an active adult. So using those sort of terms is important to get a younger crowd in, if that makes sense. 55 plus condos, 55 plus homes, 55 plus neighborhoods, targeting that group versus targeting senior living. Because when you're 55, you don't think you're a senior, right? So.
Right.
55 is the new 35, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just keep bumping those ages back a decade. Okay, well, this has been an awesome discussion today. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I did want to leave our audience with this, though. If our audience has any more questions, because I'm assuming they might, how can they contact the two of you? Do you want to leave us with some contact information or where they might be able to go to find that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to give everybody my cell number as well as my email. Feel free to shoot me an email. Feel free to shoot me a text or call. I'm completely open and welcome that. My email is Jen, Jen, and then L for lovely, Jen L at clxmedia.com. My phone number is 360-348-3303. And Janine, I'm going to ask you to chime in here for a quick second. Last time I botched our new senior living URL. Can you make sure and tell everybody what our new senior living URL is so I don't botch it again? Thank goodness there was a redirect.
Yes, you can go to www.conversionlogix.com/senior living.
Cool. John, really quickly.
Yeah. So yeah, text me. I'm happy to answer your questions. I've been doing this a while. 314-749-5080. And my email is jgreaves, G-R-E-A, V as in Victor, E-S, at DEI-central.com.
Cool. Love that 314 area code.
Yeah, man.
St. Louis. All right, everyone. We are a little bit over time. So thank you, Conversion Logix, for making this possible. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll be back in about 15 minutes with another panel. So stay tuned. But thank you, John. Thank you, Jen. This has been great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, John.